everybody to the Content Lab podcast. We're on episode 31. We're joined by Mr. Chagdrick Berger and Jake Marconi. First of all, before we get started, big shout out to HWPO Training for letting us use, the facilities. This is brand new, yeah. This is our studio, and I asked him this morning if we could use it, and she said, of course. So big shout out to them for letting us use it, and shout out to our friend Josh here. He's kind of producing the podcast, if that makes sense. If again, this is very we're trying to make it work. If the audio is not loud enough or it's messing up, let us know. That way we can fix it. But yeah, thank you guys for joining us or joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Yeah. I feel like we really built into the live here with that music is built.
I know, right?
Yeah, as you counted us down.
Yeah. So we have a couple of different things we want to talk about. But first, let's start with the introduction. Just Chagdrick, if you want to get started, just tell us about you. I mean, we're friends, but at the same time, I feel like I don't know much about your background leading up to you being a freelance content creator. So if you can, expand.
Yeah, I mean, I found photography during 2019 when they opened up media passes to everyone, and I was just one of those people.
The CrossFit games?
Yeah, who definitely shouldn't have been there. I had a $200 camera and a fixed lens. It was like the most garbage setup you can get. I think I spent overall $200 on eBay. Found myself a way in, shot probably 10,000 photos, and maybe 3 were usable. The rest were, all out of focus or blurry, dark, and then from there it was from there it just became an idea of I had a good time, but how can I dive into this a little bit more? And really I set that camera down.
Oh, wait a second. It says that the camera's picking up the
audio.
Right.
That's what I thought about.
Let's see. We're gonna fix it. What's happening? Okay. Easy fix. Audio. It's what is a Rodecaster Pro?
Yep. Can you hear me? Yes. Hello. Hello. Can you guys let us know if the audio is improved? Is it working?
Better.
Let's go.
Who's they? How many people?
Wait a second. So if that one doesn't work, click the next area. Way better. Okay, it's working.
Perfect. All right. We're back.
Starting again the intro.
We're back. All right.
We're back. We're gonna start the intro again. So, all right, welcome everybody to episode 31 of the Content Lab podcast. We're joined by Chagdrick Berger and Jake Marconi. Before we get started, as I said before the mic wasn't working, big shout out to HWPO Training for letting us use their studio, brand new studio. I asked Sammy this morning, and she said, of course, you guys can use it. So big shout out to them and to Josh that's helping us with the audio. Again, if you guys for some reason can't hear us, let us know. I'm reading here that it looks like it's better, so that's good. Yeah, so first thing we were gonna do is some introductions. So Chagdrick, I know you started, so let's keep it going.
All right, let's bring it back around. Yeah, so again, finding photography was something that was not intentional. It was I wanted, I was working out in a Globo gym, and I was like, I got to show off for the gram. I got to, you're not working in the dark all the time, just to not let people know you're fit. So I really bought, like I said, $200 camera. It was a Sony A300, came with the lens that was in the box, and found my way into the CrossFit Games in 2019, I think it was. And it was just they opened media for everyone. And I snuck my way in somehow. And like I said, I took probably 10,000 photos, not even exaggerating, and less than 10, most likely in the realm of 3 to 5 were actually usable photos that I would put somewhere. And still today, I'm not showing anyone those. They were so bad. But something from that event, it felt good. And I was like, I think I can do this. And then just talking, I mean, you meet so many people there that have been doing it for years and they all help you out. I don't think I touched the camera for a couple of years after that, like never picked it up again. And I was like, I want to find a way to expand my base of skills. Like I get pretty bored easily, so I bounce around, whether that's, majors in college or jobs. It's usually like I want to find something that can kind of keep me going. And while I was in school, I picked the camera back up and started taking pictures at my gym. Started taking pictures of friends and family, and then it was like someone asked me to do their senior pictures, and it's interesting. Someone asked me to do them first, and they said to me, they canceled on me the day of, and they said, "We're gonna go with a professional instead." And like that's something that still sticks with me today,
Yeah.
because I'm always like, while at the time I didn't have that title, and I still don't know if I do, but it was a mark where I was like, I never want to have that point where someone thinks I'm not capable. So
Yeah.
then it was like I did a session with another girl that I was in school with, and I put everything into that. Like, again, I probably took another 3,000 photos, and it was like, I knew I'd get some that were just, like, bangers. And sure enough, like, a few came out, and they were like, they loved them. So I was like,
Mm.
"Okay, I think I can get back into this." And the contacts I met at the games before, they just stayed true to me. They were good friends of mine, and they just, like, kept plugging me with things.
Yep.
Um, Luckily, I came back at the CrossFit Games, and this was the year after.
2021,
Yeah.
the year after COVID, right?
Yeah, so it was, like, restrictions were in place, and I was there with shout out Joseph Yates. I was working under him. He does crazy projects all the time, but, he ended up testing positive for COVID, wasn't allowed into the venue, and all of his contracts, essentially, like, I had to cover them. And again, like, I don't have serious capabilities with the camera at this point. I've never taken a video, and he's like, "Hey, we need videos for Tier, First Form, Evertrain," like, it was when for Noah Olson, like, all these things that were just, like, a lot bigger than I was expecting
Yeah.
to, because I was really just there to learn. And I remember one night in the hotel, he's, like, walking me through how to even, like, record a video, because 'cause I'm like, "I have no idea. I have no software on my computer, I have nothing." And I remember getting back and posting things, and it was like I was flipping from portrait to landscape in the video edit. So, like, you'd go and you'd see it in its full screen, and then all of a sudden it switches and it's portrait mode, and you're like, horrible. But
Yeah.
I think I ended up, like, throughout the weekend getting a few more things going, figured out a little bit better, and then again, just, like, it was a numbers game. Like, I
Yeah.
was like, if I take enough, I'll get something that's usable.
What's crazy is that wasn't too long ago.
No,
I mean,
that
we're
was-
talking about a few years ago, like 2021. Not even 2 years ago, right? It's like
No.
a year and a half.
Year and a half.
And yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I wanted to talk today about. Something that we've been talking about. How to, like, be somebody that clients feel comfortable by working with you, and that's something you do very well. But before we get into that topic, I wanna have Jake talk a little bit about his background, and also some people don't know, but Jake is a pretty talented photographer as well.
That
I
makes
he
me
is.
uncomfortable.
Yeah. And it's, I don't know, it's just like you have a good understanding of composition, and you actually know about cameras. It's like I was very surprised when I remember first time we started talking about photography. You showed me some of your photos, and also like he started talking about like technical stuff, like different type of camera lenses. I'm like, oh, okay. So he actually knows. It's not just like great coach. He also knows about this world of content creation. So if you can expand on that.
Yeah, I could give you the long story, but I'll
And
give you the short.
before you get started, we have Eric here. He says, "The boys stoked for this one. Love y'all." Eric, we miss you. We actually, the
I know,
plan
we're
was to
bummed you
have
couldn't
you
make it.
here, doing this podcast with us, but next time for sure.
Yeah, so one, I miss Eric a lot. I've learned a lot from him in the photography realm in the last 2 years. So thank you for that. But my full-time job is I'm the director of coaching at HWPO Training. And so I work in fitness, right, with athletes specifically and with programming. And that's something that I've done pretty much my whole life, right? And that's not an exaggeration. I started training when I was 12, and I was known, like, if you go back to my high school or my hometown, you're like, Jake Marconi. They're like, that weirdo was always in the gym. It was really weird. He
Yeah,
never did anything
we saw
other than
that
be in the
photo
gym.
at the Roadhouse.
Yeah, at the Texas,
The Texas Roadhouse.
Yeah. That was from a powerlifting meet. I left the house for that meet. It was in Pennsylvania, so it was like a 5-hour drive, weighing 160 pounds, and I stepped on the scale the way in, and I was 175. And the director of the meet was like, well, you made a mistake on either your application or you ate too much on the way here, so we're going to move you up a class. But that's why I look bigger than I do now in that photo. But I've been in fitness since I was like 12, and when I say that, I really mean, for some reason I latched onto it. Like, you had that experience at the CrossFit Games where you were like, man, this is something I want to do. And really early on for me, fitness was something that I connected with big time. And like, at the time, I wouldn't have described it to you that way. I would have been like, I really connect with fitness. But for some reason, it like grabbed a hold of me. And I spent all of my free time reading about it. I spent all of my free time like writing workouts or working out and doing fitness, to the point where my 8th grade gym teacher was like, hey, you're a little too angry and a little too strong not to go play a sport. So she put me in lacrosse, which was like with the next town over, because I wasn't in any organized sports. I was like racing BMX and was a bit of a rebel, air quotes, right? But then through high school, I played football and like really delved into training and competed in a lot of powerlifting, and found CrossFit and hated it. I thought it was the dumbest thing on earth, mostly because of the people that I was listening to about training thought it was dumb, right? Powerlifters and weightlifters were like, high rep weightlifting under fatigue is a terrible idea. And I just kind of regurgitated it. And then the athletic trainer at my high school was a CrossFitter, and she went to the CrossFit, she went to regionals on a team. And so she kind of showed me that it was cool, and I started competing in it. And then ever since have either coached at a gym or competed myself and worked with athletes. And most recently in the last 2 years, so in 2021, Matt brought me onto his team, and I started writing programming for HWPO. And then it's grown into this role where I still write programming. I coach Jason Hopper alongside Matt and alongside all of the other athletes, and then like manage our team of coaches.
Yeah, and you were the first coach, right, to join HWPO.
Yeah,
Like,
it
you
was.
probably joined. I think you joined before it was even a brand.
Yeah, so we were originally with another company that was delivering the programming, right?
Yeah.
So we would write it and they would handle delivering it. They had their own app, and so none of that was a headache for us. So we would just
Yeah.
write programming. And at that time, it was just Sammy, Matt, myself, and then Eric came in as the photographer. But it was, I got hired before we were officially our own brand.
Yeah, and fast forward to now, you guys are opening the headquarters. I mean, the grand opening was a couple of days ago.
Yeah,
So
we just had our grand opening weekend. There was a lot of work put into that gym. Last Wednesday, this studio didn't exist, and there was nothing out in that gym, and now we have a full gym.
yeah, it's pretty wild. How do you get to the point to, because I feel like you're pretty much Matt's right hand, right? Like, when it comes to not only training, programming, but also, like, I feel like you're always with him. Like, he has a lot of trust in you. How did that like evolve to that point?
Yeah, so you mentioned earlier relationships, and like, I always joke that there's like not many skills I have except that I really enjoy people, right? And I
Yeah.
like hanging out with people. I enjoy being around people, and I genuinely enjoy like getting to know people. And I don't mean that in a corny way. Like, I like going to have dinner with folks, and like when you guys are in town. And it was the same with Matt. He started dating Sammy. Sammy was coaching at the same gym that I happened to end up training at when I moved to Providence for college. And so Sammy and I kind of became friends. And through that, Matt started coming to the gym, and him and I made the joke early on where we were like, do we have the same dad? Because we would say like,
Yeah, now that
sayings.
you have short hair, dude, you guys, they look like twins.
Yeah, it wasn't even based
It's
on that.
wild.
Like, it wasn't our looks at all. It was the fact that we would say things and act in certain ways that I was like, your dad's got to be 75 too, right? And he was like, oh yeah.
Similar body type too.
Yeah.
Good.
He's got bigger arms and shoulders than me by
Yeah.
far. But we hit it off, and like, we just became buddies pretty quickly, and we remained friends through all the years that he was competing and that I was also competing. And it got to a point where he was giving me a lot of like now that I know him even better, uncharacteristic mentorship. At the time when he competed, he didn't really give out a lot of his own knowledge. Now he does. He's really, really, really giving with what he knows and wants to help people. But at the time, he was holding it close to his chest. And we had become friends, and he was like just helping me out, like giving me some workouts to do, asking me what I did, and sharing a little bit of his strategy and his knowledge with me. And then to the point, even when in the 2018 Open, like I was doing open workouts and texting Matt and being like, dude, is this a good score? And he'd be like, yeah, that's a really good score. Like, nice job.
Yeah.
And then that season I did well. And I went down to train with him in Cookville, and I was like, hey, you gotta like go unbroken on this workout, or like, what's your strategy? And he turned at me and he goes, you get no strategy anymore.
You're starting to beat me. That's it.
I wasn't beating him, but we were competing, right?
Yeah. I can
And
tell.
he was like, yeah, you don't get any strategy anymore. Like, you've achieved your goal, and now you're going to be competing at regionals. I'm going to be competing at regionals. And they were different regions, but it was this kind of moment of recognition where I was like, oh, that's pretty cool, actually. And then we both were going to Dubai that year. And I was like, hey, do you want to get some training in? Like, you're going to be in Vermont before Dubai. I'm pretty close. And he was like, yeah, man, I'm sorry, I don't train with competitors. Like, we're not going to. And I was
No,
like,
gosh.
that's cool, except we're not competing. Like, we're going to be on very different spots on that leaderboard, but I respect it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we've just become friends and remained friends ever since.
That's cool. Another cool thing about having you here is that you can give us an outside perspective on the whole content creation thing, because obviously, like the work that Chagdrick and I do, for example, and Eric, like everything that we do is like, like we keep communication between us and like, hey, these are our tasks, but we don't understand like the importance of, or we do understand the importance, but in an outside perspective, like you can see more like the difference that it can make to have quality content for a brand. Like you
Right.
guys are, building a brand from zero, and you also want to have that good quality because you already know like people already know who Matt Fraser is, right? When we're talking about CrossFit, but the goal is to just expand to different areas
Yeah.
for HWPO. So it's very important to have a good brand, consistent quality throughout. So I thought it would be good to, have you talk about like for you, Sammy, Matt, like what's that outside perspective in content creation?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because like we see a lot on Instagram, and I think they're moving away from it a little bit, but we see a lot of just like sexy stuff sells. And what I mean by that is short clips. Like, you guys want to create something that's cool and cinematic and like create some type of feeling. And then a reel that is like Matt screaming, let's go, does really well, right?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
it's not like that unique of a moment. It is, but there's no story around that,
Mhm.
right? People kind of have context because they follow the page, right? And that's where I see content for us and like me as a coach coming into play is you have to build enough story that people can know like what the context is for a reel like that without it needing to be in that specific reel, right? So if they're a follower of HWPO or they are like a fan of the brand and they consume all of our content, all of it put together makes a lot of sense.
For sure.
If you
Yeah.
find any one piece of it that's like an outlier, it could be a cool visual piece of content, but it doesn't make a lot of sense from the story perspective. And so when we just have a weekend like this and you're vlogging and shooting photos and grabbing reels and filming some of our coaching sessions, like all of those play together to say, hey, look at like we have this really cool, good looking gym. But what we do inside of it is we share our knowledge and we try to help people get better. And nobody knows that second part, that we're getting people better other than if they see it, right? And some of the like my favorite content to watch growing up or read growing up, watching like trying to get better at fitness was those intimate moments, right? So you filmed something yesterday that was us talking specifically about how to get a specific person with a specific set of issues or things better.
For sure.
And that's something that from an outsider looking in is really interesting to watch, right? Because no, that person is not the same person as me, but I can probably take something away from like that really specific chat.
Mhm.
Where from a coaching perspective, it's similar where if I get up in front of the room and I'm like, hey, we're going to talk about the snatch, I can coach it really generally, and you're going to get a little bit out of it if you're at this beginner level of knowledge. But what would be even better and what I like to be able to do is go work with that person one-on-one, but somebody else, and I've had this happen a ton of times when I'm coaching, somebody else hears that thing that I'm saying to Chagdrick and they're like, oh, that works for me.
Yeah.
And so whenever I look at like you guys creating content, or when Sammy and I, or like the whole team has meetings, it's like, what do we want to talk about? Like, what do we want to put out into the world, visually, written, podcasts, whatever? I'm always thinking about what would I want to consume, especially when I didn't know stuff. Because what do I want to consume now, being on the inside of things and like knowing more just generally about training or the sport is very different. And like Josh and I talk about this all the time. It's almost too nuanced. And I don't mean that to be like, "Oh, we know so much," but we're just really concerned about this like one specific thing about your big toe on your right foot and how it changes in the snatch. But like that doesn't mean a lot to a lot of people. So when we get in the room, we're like, well, what do we want to create? We talk a lot about wanting to show people these conversations, like
Yeah.
this back door, right? And so somebody listening to this is maybe like a video creator and their thing is judo, and
Mhm.
like they create content for it, but they maybe are getting something out of this, being like, oh, the content I create could be educational, like that might be
Absolutely.
what resonates. It's just not visually sexy as its own thing, it's also educational. So when I think about like content for us and just fitness in general, specifically us, I think it's got to have some type of meaning beyond just being visually appealing.
Yeah. And I always say that it's so important for me when like if I didn't know about if I'm gonna do a different sport, or I'm gonna go, even when I'm gonna go to a restaurant, or just anything I do in life, if maybe it's because I'm also in that business, like, social media and creating content. But if the quality that they like present to their audience is not good, that just kind of tells me that they don't care. And
Right.
that's just me. Like, I'm sure maybe Chadrick, that you probably feel the same way, because we're really into the content. But it's almost like I said it one time in one podcast. It's like a first the first time you meet somebody, and they maybe, I don't know, they had bad breath, for example. Then you remember that, right? Like, it's
Mhm.
kind of like that's your first impression. It's
Yeah.
a bad first impression. So for a business, for me, it's like the same thing. If I go to, like, somebody recommended me a product, even if it's recommended by somebody, and I go to their website and it just doesn't look quality, or they just, the consistency is off, it just shows me like maybe they don't care that much, and I'm immediately not attracted to a product.
Totally. And everybody knows what good photography looks like now. Like they
Yeah.
know what good branding looks like. They know what good photography looks like. It's really easy to create a website that looks visually appealing on Squarespace. So like the baseline for people's tolerance for like crappy looking content. Can I swear on here?
Yeah, that's
For
fine.
shitty looking content is way, way lower. Like they're
Mm,
or higher, right? They're like, no, it's gotta look good.
yeah.
I mean, I remember when we went to a gym one time and we were looking at their Instagram, and looking at their Instagram, we almost didn't go.
Yeah.
And it was just like they didn't have much about it. They didn't have anything. And
I do that all
The
the
visuals
time.
weren't good.
still today, after stepping foot in that gym, I go, that was one of the best gyms in the world.
Genuinely one of the coolest gyms we've ever gone to.
I've been chasing the feeling I got in that gym
Chasing that
since,
dragon.
dude, since we left, because it was from the like community there to the aesthetic of look of it, all of it, like the feel, the environment was phenomenal, but their social media was not great. And it's like we could have missed that
It's
just because we
crazy.
didn't want to go.
They don't understand the potential that they have.
So
They
much
probably, a
potential.
lot of gyms probably think, and I mean every business in general, they probably think like, oh, we're at a point that we're comfortable, like we have good customers. I don't know if it's worth it if we, spend extra marketing budget in just having somebody take our photos, put our, have a good website. And I feel like it's mostly like an old school mentality, because I do see that a lot of the younger entrepreneurs, they really care about like their presence, their brand
Right.
brand image. Like it's something that you see now more than ever.
Do you think
And the way I see it, it's like I tell like future clients, when I sit down, I said it might be something that you see as an investment right now. Like, it might be like an expensive investment, but at the end of the day, like, you're chasing a higher return on investment, right?
Right.
Like, and the ROI is gonna be much higher, and you're gonna, it's a way that you can scale a business and just grow in a, organic way, just by paying somebody X amount of money to run your social media. But at the end of the day, you're not spending like money how can I explain it? So you're paying somebody to create the content, put on social media,
Right.
but social media is free. You put content for free on social media, and you can potentially reach thousands of people in one post, hundreds of
Yep.
thousands of people in one post. And I've had clients say, yeah, but we allocate some of this marketing budget to billboards, to put
Right.
in like the magazine, the newspaper. And in my mind, I'm like, I mean, in my mind, that makes no sense because I don't remember last time I read a magazine or the newspaper.
You should read more magazines. There's some good stuff in there. But I agree with you.
I mean, I might read it online, but it's just my way of going. It's mostly everything online, social media.
I mean,
have
like
a-
when you think about needing something, it's like the first thing you do is you search it on Google. And then once
You
I
do.
find from there, it's like, oh, maybe I ask a friend if I see that they may have been in this realm or idea. But even if I get a recommendation, I'm going right online.
Yeah,
I'm not
same.
like, oh yeah, I saw that billboard on 3rd Street and the 1-800 number was just calling my
No, but
name.
you know who's
So
successful?
before What Zombie, you know
Yeah.
him? He just said, "Thanks, Jake. My kid just learned a new word because you said, can I say bad words?"
You can thank Carlos because I controlled myself
Yeah.
first, and then he gave me the green light.
Sorry to interrupt, but yeah.
I totally lost my train
Hilarious.
of thought. Oh, you know who crushes billboards?
Who?
Personal injury lawyers.
Oh,
Nobody better.
between that and like DUI.
oh, yeah, they'll
like
get
that's
you
all
out of
you
trouble.
see. That's you see
And
everywhere.
there, I feel like there is a time and there's a market for billboards because people drive by. But how many people drive by the same road every day? I mean, in a good day, it can be 1,000, right? I feel that there's a lot more potential out of social media.
I have a
And now the
question
way
for
you
you
can
on
the
that.
way you can optimize social media to actually reach the audience that you want, right?
Yeah. Do you think that there are? This is genuinely a question. It's not an opinion. Do you think there are certain businesses or companies that like they could have a social media presence? Like, for example, I have a friend who owns a bakery,
Mhm.
and it does incredibly well. Like, and he has a social media, but he doesn't have like what we would call a presence.
Yeah.
And his clientele is not on social media. Would you say even for somebody like that, it'd be worth it to have it as like insurance down the line?
To
I
have a
think
good social media presence.
Yeah.
I was talking to, I forgot who was. Oh, it was Patrick Clark.
Mhm.
He was here this past week, and we're talking about that. We're talking about social media management, marketing, and I said that I do think it's important for some business, even if they don't get a huge like return on investment. When we're talking about like a restaurant, like if you say, hey, we have a special, blah, some people might go, but it might not be as big as he was talking about paleo power meals.
Yep.
And I'm like, I think that's great for social media. Like you post codes,
Yeah.
some of the good athletes eating that. Like a lot of people are gonna buy more into that specific business compared to a restaurant saying, "Oh, we have a special today, Taco Tuesday," stuff
Right.
like that. And I told him I think it's still important, just as a brand image thing,
Yeah. To
just
have
to have a
a
good
brand.
presence. Yes, you might not get a lot of like money in return from that specific ad that you put, but your brand is just gonna be, it's gonna look better and people are gonna relate your brand, your food, your shoes or whatever you're doing, apparel, as quality. Like, oh, okay, I remember seeing this stuff, it's really good. And when they have to choose between one or the other, they have already in their mind, this is the quality one, this is the one that, I mean, the social media looks kind of crappy, and
Yeah.
you know, most likely they're gonna choose that one. Again, that's just the way I think. I might be
No,
wrong.
you're a little biased, but I agree.
I'm a
with
little
you.
biased
I
because
do agree
that's
with you.
part of my business.
What
But
do you guys think about personal brands? Now, like I'm talking somebody who is, for lack of a better word, just trying to be an influencer, and they don't maybe have any like specific set of skills or like something they're bringing to the table other than creating like content.
are we
I-
are we talking about like us as photographers, for example?
No, because that's your online portfolio,
Okay.
right? Like you're a
So you're
photographer
saying
and
just
you
like
shoot-
generally
I'm talking about like
anyone.
generally anyone.
Yeah.
I asked because for me, like I've always kind of gone back and forth on social media because I've always been like, one, I'm like, well, nobody wants to hear what I have to say. And I don't mean that. And they're like, nobody wants to hear. I'm just like, I know how much I don't know.
Mm.
And I know that like me posting about, say, I'm making this up, a tricep extension, that there is thousands of people that are like, yeah, we know. And there's thousands of people that are like way smarter than me that are like, no, you're doing that wrong. And I feel like one of the problems with social media is that people feel like they have to say something when they've got nothing to
Yeah.
say, right? And so I've always kind of felt that way.
Uh-huh.
And then I saw a TikTok of this kid doing tricep extensions the other day, and he was kind of explaining like super basic tricep extension, and my gut was like, yeah, I know.
Mhm.
And then as soon as I had that thought, my second thought was like, but somebody doesn't.
Somebody
Like,
does, yeah.
some 14-year-old like me, like I was at some point, didn't know.
Mhm.
And like it finally clicked for me when people always say, or like, if I help one person, then I'll be happy. I've always been
Yeah.
like, that is some like BS phrase that you just say to allow yourself to
it's
like
wall
post
art,
stuff
yeah.
on Instagram. Yeah, it's wall art.
yeah.
It's like latte
Yeah.
o'clock or like
Live, laugh,
yeah,
love.
100%. That's what I always thought it was. And that finally the phrase clicked for me, and I was like, oh wait, no, that actually
Mhm.
makes sense, because like there are people who don't know what you
Yeah.
know, and you sharing is going to help them. And then there are people who do know what you know, and they're going to look at it and be like, yeah, that person's helping somebody that doesn't know.
Yeah, that reminds me of I'll give you time to answer that question, because I think you were gonna say something good about it. But before you say something, reminds me of my mom. She was sending me some reels like a month ago. I guess she started following some photography pages. She was sending me some reels of somebody explaining like very basic photography stuff, like about an aperture and how to, something about a video, like how to create the perfect motion blur, blah blah, stuff that I know,
Yeah, you're like, I
right?
know.
And she sent it to me, and in my mind I'm like, like, mom, I know all of
Basic.
this, right?
Yeah.
But that just made me think too, like, oh, it's cool. Well, first of all, it's cool that my mom is thinking of me, and like, hey,
Right.
I might, like, he might learn something about that. And me thinking like, oh, that's a dumb video. I wish I would have had videos sent to me like that when I first got started, right?
Yeah.
So it's that same thought of like, oh, like, that's dumb, but there's another 50,000 people are like, oh, that's freaking cool.
Well, and
I
it
didn't know.
teaches people stuff. Like
Yeah.
you saying that just jogged my memory. When I was first learning photography, I ate up that content. I was like,
Oh,
oh,
easily.
1/50 is what you have to be for 23.9.
correct.
Okay, like that. And now I see them and I'm like, I don't even give them a second
Yeah.
look. But at the time, like they were wildly helpful.
Yeah. I mean, some of those videos, even now, I look at and I'm like, I've started recently, so it's like a lot of that was around for
Yeah.
me. But especially having shorter form things like TikTok, they're like, here's your shortcut card. It's like those things you see now, and it is like laughable. You're like, why would I need that? But I remember,
Needing it.
yeah, when someone tells you that, like the first time, it's like you're like your world
Yeah.
changes.
That's
Like,
how
I
I
remember
got
someone-
started. And that's probably how you got started too, just learning everything online.
Yeah, I mean, between that and then like, luckily for me, it was like I was always around people.
Yeah.
So
Some mentors too.
that was probably the biggest step for me, was having someone around to ask questions, because when you get in the loophole of photography, videography, editing, any of that stuff, there's so much information that is like very nuanced or too
Mhm.
specific, when
Yeah.
it's like, hey, you were gonna film in H.265 and it's 422 10-bit, 8-bit, 12-bit.
you're
You're
like,
like,
"Oh
what
my
is
God."
happening?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
you don't
your
even want to
brain-
explore that because
No.
it's so
Yeah.
confusing. You're
It's
like,
too much.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then if you can ask someone, they can break it down in
Mhm.
simpler terms to when they're your friend or a mentor. That makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
I don't need to know that 8-bit versus 10-bit is like whatever 12 million times more color space. It's like, that doesn't matter to me.
No, it doesn't. You just need to know that one is
Cool, that's
different
one,
than the other.
yeah,
Like,
one
yeah,
works
cool.
better for this. And
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
all I need. I don't need to know
But it
compression and
takes
all that.
diving into all of that stuff to learn that. And
Yeah.
I had that experience with fitness and with photography.
Yeah.
So like with photography specifically, I started in 2018. I'd always been really into visuals, but I started in 2018. And then for all of kind of 2021 and 2022, I stepped away from it. Not like I was doing it as a job, but I just like didn't pick up the camera, wasn't shooting a lot. But from 2018 to 21, I consumed wild amounts of content on it. And then when I came back to it recently, I was like, oh, I forgot that I know all this stuff, and I actually shoot way more frequently now and way easier, and
Yeah.
don't think about all of the like options
Mhm.
anymore, because A, they're a bit automatic, but B, I'm like, oh, I know what does and does not
Mhm.
matter. And it allows you to just kind of like create. And it's the same with fitness. Like, dude, you log online and you're like, best workout program. You get inundated with information. You're like, should I do a tricep extension, or should I do a close grip bench press, or should I do like a single leg RDL, or should I do deadlifts? And it's like, well, somebody who's been training a really long time knows that doesn't really matter. But when
Yeah,
you don't
it's what
know
works
that
for
to
you.
be true, like you look at all these options and you're so paralyzed that you almost can't even do anything. And so with fitness, it's like and I think learning anything goes this way, or at least this is how I learn, is I gather as much information as possible. I like start pulling on a little thread. I'm like, well, I want bigger biceps. Yeah. Constant theme for me. And I'll start pulling on this thread, and like I don't have any intention in solving the thing other than just gathering as much
Mhm.
information as possible.
And
then
trying
it's-
everything and see what works for you, what
Exactly.
doesn't. Yeah. Um, leading up to what you were talking about, like the personal brands and stuff, I think that's what we were talking right before. Um, so when I first started my Instagram page, it was just Bound Media, and I never put my face in it. It was
Mhm.
started as a social media management agency that I did content creation, video production, whatever. Then I started working more with clients, and one of my friends, Anthony Tom, I'm sure you both,
Love Anthony.
yeah.
Yeah.
Love A-Tom, baby.
One time I remember he said, "Dude, I really think you should put your face more out there. You should put your name, Carlos Bound. You can keep it as Bound Media, your handle, but I think people need to see your face." He told me that he did that and his business just kind of took off. And he said something about the fact, like, in what we do, people care a lot about like who you are as a person, like the energy that you bring to the table, like putting a face to the name. It's really important for what we do. And I think there's a time that if you just want to keep it as an agency, that's absolutely fine. I know
Right.
people that just keep it as an agency, they never put their face, and it's great. But that's the way they want to operate their business. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna try it, right? And I swear, like the moment I started like putting myself more out there and just kind of like just being me, I started getting more clients, and people were more interested in working with me. And
Do you
I
think it's
was
a trust thing?
it's probably a couple of different things.
You're
It's
handsome
probably
too, so
it's probably a trust thing, and also you have more you have a space, and now you can like be you, right, and
Mhm.
talk about like whatever you want to do, feelings, or like, hey, instead of being like, oh, here at Bound Media we care about your next project, like
Right. It's like a
instead,
little easier
yeah.
to attach to a person.
Exactly. Yeah. You can connect more with people by being a human instead of an agency, right?
Yeah.
And I was talking to Chagdrick this whole week. We've been talking about it, and I told him I think that most of the jobs that we get, it's not because of our quality of content. I think that that's a good start. Like
Yep.
we create good
There's
stuff.
like a bar that you've got to be able to
Yeah,
pass.
but I think most of the jobs that we get, it's because of who we are and what we bring to the table when it comes to, keeping the client feel comfortable. We're reliable. Like they know that, hey, this is what you have to do. We're gonna get it done, and also we're gonna have good energy around getting it done, right? And they're gonna feel that like energy around being
Yep.
positive and stuff like that. And then once we're done with the project, hey, with the project, hey, let's do it again another time, right? And I think it's very important. And I was talking to Chag, and I was like, dude, you've been doing this for a year, and you're getting big projects. You're working with really awesome brands.
Yeah.
And I do think, and I told him not to say that your work is not good, but I 100% believe that the reason why you're getting all these jobs is because of who you are.
Yeah.
There is another 1,000 dudes that can do the same thing as you do or better, and they're choosing you instead of them, and it's because of that energy that you bring.
Absolutely. That's something that coaching in a CrossFit gym, we would always talk about, like, who are we going to hire? Who are we going to hire?
Same
who
with
we're gonna hire?
coaching, yeah.
And we're like, we don't really care if you have you need some knowledge, right?
It's like you have to reach a certain point, which
Yeah.
is like I told him, it's not about necessarily being the best, because there's always going to be someone who's better at this, better at that.
Right.
So it's like, can I be good enough? Obviously, still trying to improve, but like the line I say is, I want to be good enough where the work that I put out, I'm confident in, I'm comfortable with, I look at and I go, I like what I see. But more so, it's like, make good content, but be a better person.
Yeah.
It's like if you can do that. I mean, my first jobs, like doing that first CrossFit games, it was like Laura and Leah. It was like for them, they liked me a lot, and they said they're like, because I was one of the few that treated them like people. They were like, so many people were like, I need to be in this spot and this time because my athletes are here, there, and it's like I was just obviously I didn't belong there. So in my head, I'm like,
You had a
like I
little
really, yeah,
reverence,
it didn't matter. So I was like, hey, if there's space, I'll go down. If there's not, I'll go up to a seat. If anything, I'll just hang out with you guys, basically.
Yeah.
And really, for them, they just like became references for me of more so character than content.
Yep.
And from there, it just like it blew up where I was just getting things all the time just because of how I treated these two people that happened to have influence. And for me, it was like I didn't know much about media at the time or the space of content creation. I knew nothing. So I didn't know what their role was or what they did. It's
They were
just
just
like
people, and you
if you're
treated them
good
such.
to people, everything falls into place. And
Yeah, and the same with the opposite. Like if you can be really good,
Mhm.
and if you are a head case and everything bothers you, and then you're pretty much a downer and complain about things, dude, you can be the best one in the game,
Oh,
and
yeah.
like they're not gonna want you back.
And there are people that like I haven't experienced a ton of them, but I've certainly experienced them where they think that the only way to like be getting a huge project that's really stressful done is to be an ass the whole time,
Mm.
right? Like
Yep.
they've got to be like, no, you're here, you're here. And I'm
Yeah.
like, you could just have said that
Yeah.
the same amount of time, the same authority if you were like, hey, I need you to go over there and I need you to go over there.
Yeah.
And some people who get enough like status or they have an athlete that they're like, no, they're over there. Like they'll act that way, and you didn't act that way because like you didn't have to be anywhere, and so you're like,
No,
no,
yeah,
seriously,
exactly.
I'm chill, like it's
Yeah.
all good.
And at the same time, people struggle. There's a certain amount of people. I have some friends that really struggle to find jobs because they're very. I wouldn't say being introvert is bad in this specific business, but if you don't interact, if you don't communicate, if you don't interact with a future client, it's just gonna be a lot harder for you to get that connection going. And like I always say in the podcast that it's a game about building relationships, having the right connections. One client's gonna bring you to another one. Like I worked with HWPO one time. Rob was there. Hey, can you do my YouTube channel for the Arnold? Sure. It's a connections thing, right? You get one job from something you previously did. And I have some of my friends are like really good at content creation, but they just don't have that entrepreneurship like mindset, and they just can't build like good relationships, good connections. And at the end of the day, it's very hard for them to find new jobs and having new experiences. And it's something that I think you can work on. Like it's something
Yeah.
that it's like almost like a skill that you have to learn. For me, it's just very natural to just be like outgoing and extroverted. Um, but I have some friends that really struggle, and I have one of my friends specifically. She's super introverted, and it took her a while to get to a point. She's like, okay, I know what I need to do. Let's make it happen.
Right.
And she's super successful now. So it's not like if you're introverted and you
You can't make
you
it.
can't make
Yeah.
it. Yeah,
There's
you can
openings.
It's
definitely
worth
work on it.
learning
Yeah,
though how to not be like we were
Exactly.
talking about this the other day. You could go like this and take a good photo by
Yeah.
accident. It doesn't take away from photographers'
Exactly.
work, but it's just easier to be taking good photos. And so it's like all the more worth it. And that goes for anything. Like it's easier to be a good writer. It's easier to
Yeah.
be a good like whatever because you have ChatGPT and you have
Yeah.
all of these tools that make doing things easier. So it's worth it to be like a relatively remarkable person. Not that any of
Yeah.
us are, but like it's
Yeah,
worth
but
it to
it's-
try to be.
It's like I always say the shot is almost never worth it. Like if I
Mhm.
have to either break a rule or
It's a bar.
hurt someone's feelings, it's like the shot's not worth it. It
Yeah.
really isn't. There's if you can like my whole thing with people, it's like connect with them. Like for when it comes to like Sammy, she's the only person in my phone who I have do not disturb on 90% of my day. She's the one exception.
They
So
just let it.
yeah, let it. It's there. So I'm like, if she texts me, calls me, whatever, I'm like, okay, I'm ready.
Yeah.
Like just because she's given me a lot, especially she was the first bigger brand that like HWPO specifically, but specifically Sammy was like the first person to bring me into the world and give me an opportunity well before I deserved
Yeah.
it.
Well, your mom brought you into the world first.
That's
but-
true. Dude, mom brought me in, but Sammy carrying me through right now. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. What Zombie says for Jake, I think the passion will be what matters. That's a difference between another tricep extension video and something great. You have the personality for some good stuff.
Thanks, What Zombie.
Dude, this guy I love him. He's
Very
always so
complimentary.
nice. Like,
Thank you.
shout out to him. He the first episode he watched was the one that I did with Roderick, and since then we've communicated a little more. And I mean, if you guys don't follow him, go ahead and do
He's
it.
funny, dude.
His stuff is good. It's funny.
Yeah, he's really funny.
Yeah. But dude, yeah, I mean, you're crushing. I tell you all the time, like it's so fast the way that just you evolve, and it's almost like cliche, but dude, connections and building relationships, that's your thing. Like you're really good
Yeah.
at it, and people have a good time around you.
Yeah.
Even the
mean,
athletes, like the athletes feel very comfortable around you,
Well,
and
you
they
get them laughing, and you
That's
can't
what-
not be
that's what-
smiling.
Yeah.
I say like one thing, even in shoots, like when I shot the Arnold, with a few of like the wellness and fitness women, one of them I was shooting like a day in the life and doing the behind the scenes with her family, and she has her kid there. And the kid's obviously super shy in front of the camera. And I go, if this is how she's shy, I have to make a way to have her be comfortable with
Right.
me. And it's like, yes, you can just stick a camera in her face, or you can just ignore her and be like, the day's about mom, basically competing, not her. It's like, okay, mom's getting her makeup done. Let me hide my camera underneath my arm, and I'm just gonna talk to her. So like it starts off easy, and I'm like, so what's your favorite color? And she's like nervous. She's like blue. And I'm like, what do you like to eat? And chicken nuggets. And then it's like, I keep asking further questions, and I get to like, what do you think about mom being here? And she's like, I'm so excited. I can't wait
That's
for mom to
awesome.
win. And then like goes into this, and I go, hope you know the whole time we were interviewing. And she goes, no way. And then it became, I was like, do you want to record mom? So then it's her and I both holding the camera, recording mom. And as we finished the makeup session, we're leaving, and she goes, I want to be like Chag. I want to hold the camera.
That's
I want to,
so
and it
cool.
like, dude, it got me because it was
He's
just
about to
like,
cry.
dude, I am, dude, she was I mean, it was just like you see a moment when you go, it's not about getting the best shot. Like you see my elbow pop in. It's like,
Yeah.
I just made this little girl feel comfortable with me that then we became best friends. I
Yeah.
remember halfway through the weekend, she was like, Mom, can he come home with us? I have 2 beds in my room. We can have sleepovers. Like that's what it went from her being terrified of me to being like, okay, let me sit with this
Yeah.
person and just like treat them how they want to be treated, let them feel known. And then I mean, she'll still text me like the mom will be like, hey, Stallings, whatever. That was the girl's name. Stallings said this, said that. And it's just like I think of that time and I go, again, it's not about the shot. Like if I can pull connection
Mhm.
and like I always say the line, like
Mm.
evoke emotion out of people, it's game over.
That's so
Um,
cool. We talked about this before. When you're doing something like that, right? Or like you're sitting at home, you got nothing to do. Are you thinking about like what stories you want to tell? Like you guys as creators, are you like, I want to shoot for this brand and tell the story? You see somebody and you're like, man, that person's got this really cool story. Like I want to document it.
For me personally, I just have like random ideas that pop to my mind, and it's almost like it's just this idea that either I do it at the moment, I write it down, like, and I take action, or just never gonna happen. It's
Mm.
something like I have a bunch of thoughts just coming to my mind. Like I can put as an example the podcast. It was, dude, I remember. I think I mentioned in one of the early episodes. It was, I couldn't sleep for like a week. It was weird. I was like, what am I doing? Like all I do is wake up, I take photos of a client, go home, I edit, then next day a video of a client. It's like it was so repetitive. I go work out, blah blah, and I felt like almost like at this point, I mean, it's not lost, but just like something was
Yeah, you
missing.
needed like something
Yeah,
else.
something different, right? Something that will be very uncomfortable for me to do.
Yep.
Not your typical photo shoot that you just go kind of like automatic. Okay, awesome.
Yep.
Um, something that will be like almost like nerve wracking,
Yeah.
right? And I mentioned in that episode, I'm like, dude, in front of a camera, like you put a camera in front of me, I wouldn't know what to say. I'll be like, I remember in college they were doing one of the interviews for like it was at the end of the year that they'll pick some of the collegiate athletes,
Yep.
and they'll like interview them, and they had a script I just had to say, and I couldn't say it. I was like, dude, I'm so sorry. Once I see the red thing going, like the recording, I just can't talk in front of a
Yeah.
camera. Nerve wracking. And I was like, dude, one more morning I woke up, I'm like, if I make a podcast and I have a camera in front of me, that'll be very challenging. Like it's something that I'm not comfortable. It's gonna suck for the first 3 to 6 months,
Yeah.
but I know it's gonna be beneficial for me. It's gonna challenge me to new things. It's gonna make me, maybe build some relationships, meet new people, which at the end it wasn't actually like the plan, but a couple of months after, I'm like, oh, okay, like I'm actually meeting really awesome people. People reaching out to me like, oh, I listen to your podcast, and then you build extra
Yeah.
connections. And I woke up that one morning with the thought, I'm gonna make a podcast. I'm gonna just create one. And the same day, I reached out to Matsusa, which is Savant's producer, and I'm like, dude, I need help. What should I get? How can I do this live? I call Ariel Martinez.
That's our boy.
Yeah, he has a podcast too. Hey, what equipment should I buy? I think I was doing first episode 2 days after.
That's awesome.
I knew that if I would have waited one more day with the thought in my head, the thought of like, oh, I want to do this challenging new thing, I would have never done it.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, think about it. If you know it's going to be beneficial, if you know it's challenging, but it's going to make you a better creator, a better person, whatever you want to do, take action. If not, it's never going to happen.
It's weird for me, like how you said, like thinking of things at home. It's usually, I draw a lot from, movies, and whether that's a trailer or whatever. And
Yep.
it's like I see something and it makes me feel, and I'm like, oh, I want to chase that feeling. Even the movie, I just saw the movie Devotion, and it's just
Mhm.
like two pilots in a war, whatever. And it's like some of the frames and just how things go. I'm like, this, I don't care about a plane in the sky, but the way it's composed, the way the music hits, like everything, all of a sudden you're like, you feel something. You're like, what was that?
Yeah.
And I'm
Especially
like, how
watching
can
movies,
I?
documentaries, stuff like that. You get ideas like, whoa, that would be cool if we do this in one of our, in our industry, in our circle.
Yeah, I mean, and I think back to doing an interview with like a friend, and I'm like, you interview a friend, and all of a sudden you think you know about them, but you don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then next thing you know, like you hear their story and you're crying,
Right.
and you're like, whoa, where did this come from?
Yeah.
Like before, I'm like you think they're your friend, and you're like, oh no, we weren't friends, and then now you're like, no,
Now we're friends.
now, yeah,
Yeah.
you're in,
Do you
and you
feel?
chase that.
Do you guys feel like you have like a specific voice? Like I feel like everyone has a voice. Like they're drawing on their set of circumstances. Like for example, I wrote something the other day that was about like kind of about the life that I want to live. And
Mhm.
as I wrote it, I was like, oh, that's about my parents. I kind of romanticized the era that they were from, and like a lot of the reason I am the way that I am is like chasing this kind of like idea or feeling, like this feeling that I've never actually experienced, but it's like this idea. That's where a lot of my voice comes from. Especially when I like write or get up on my soapbox and go on a rant.
Yeah.
Do you guys feel like you have a voice when you create? You're like, this is kind of the like language I'm speaking when I create. Like you like to create. I'm not saying this is what you do
Mhm.
create, but like you like to create stories about like families, or like you like to create stories about brands, or
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely things that I wouldn't say specifically like brands or families, whatever. It's like there's a concept that I wrap my head around, and like I've said it 100 times already, but like the evoke emotion, like that's
Mhm.
like on my website, on my Instagram. It's like everywhere for me, because a brand is cool. Sure, it has the coolest images, or it has cool sunglasses or shoes, whatever. And you're like, that's a cool thing. But like, if you can drive someone to connect with that, to make them feel something, people are bought in.
Right.
And that's why I say the separation, even with like Instagram and YouTube. I value like 1,000 YouTube subscribers to be worth more than 1,000,000 Instagram followers, because they have this buy-in to like who you are, and what
it's a
you
more
do.
engaged audience.
Yeah, and it's like, if you have 1,000 YouTube subscribers, you'll be a millionaire. If you have 1,000,000 Instagram followers, who knows what's gonna happen?
Right.
So for me, it's just like there are these things, but who creates those things? Who makes it? Why does this exist? What does this mean to you? And I think especially like being here at HWPO, like that was a big thing for me, is like there's a clear vision and there's a big team around, and the people behind marketing, Sammy, not the people, but Sammy.
Yeah.
It's like her thoughts and things on how things can go. It's like I may not always love it, or I may not always agree with it, but it's like at the end I go, "Oh yeah, she's right."
Yeah. That
Because her
worked.
vision was greater than mine.
Right.
And it's like if you can have the overall thought of how this can come together as something, and show people more than just like we write programming. It's like, no, people almost now, I don't want to say they care less about the programming, but when you have all these other things that matter, for example, I go with just this brand, obviously, because it's convenient for us. I'm like, Circle's an area where you go, there's more in-depth like gauge of accessibility.
Right.
It's like, oh, now I'm not just following HWPO. Like, no,
You're a part of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
Jake is talking to me personally. Josh is talking to me personally. That you send it in a video. It's like, oh, Matt replied to this, and it's like, dude, I just got to talk to Matt. He just watched me snatch. Like, that's crazy. And it's like all of a sudden you've become more than just the thing you are. You become a part of people's lives. And if I
Yeah.
can make a brand a part of someone's life, or if I can expand someone's story to make other people know, like maybe I hate the line, but maybe you're a little less alone.
Yeah.
Because there's no one who's had a soul experience that someone else hasn't experienced.
Totally.
So if you can bring those people together, all of a sudden they can get through things that were more difficult that maybe alone they weren't able to. So a lot of that is the way like I go about things of like, let me bring this to be more than just the thing.
Yeah.
How about you, Jake? Like, what made you start writing, like blogging, and just talking about,
It
thoughts,
was the thing I
emotions?
said about Instagram. It's like I've always been like, why would you want to listen to what I have to say? And I still don't like expect people to, but I had a very similar experience at the podcast thing where I was sitting there and I was like, man, something's missing for me. Like
Mhm.
I'm doing the job that I love, like in the thing that I love. And there's still this part of me that is like, I want to engage with people in some different way. And I think part of that was I scratched that itch with coaching in person, multiple people every day, like at a gym, right? So I got to have this experience where I talked to a bunch of different people from a bunch of different backgrounds. And I had a lot of conversations like this just by accident. And now I moved up here to Vermont and like I'm a little more alone than I was. I don't mean that in like the sense that I'm really lonely. I'm so lonely. No, I'm just kidding. But
saying
I
no.
was more alone than I was. And I was engaging with myself a lot. So like I've always written a ton. Like
Mhm.
I have journals all the way back to probably like 7th grade, right? I just have always written a lot. And I was like, man, this is a skill that I really like wish I was better at. And so same thing with you. I was like, I kind of have to do it publicly or else I'm not going to get
Yeah.
better at it. Like I'm just not going to hold myself accountable to my journal being better written. And so I started doing it a little more publicly, and like Josh and I have a lot of really good chats that are random. And I was like, maybe somebody will get something from this. And it really was the tricep extension thing. Is like
Yeah.
when I watched that video was the first day that I posted like a blog or a journal post, and like a bunch of them on there are like really poorly written, but they're like just kind of stream of conscious ideas like we're talking about. And then I wrote a piece 2 weeks ago, I think. That was the first thing that I ever wrote that I was like, I think that was good. Like, not just good to me, like, I think that people might enjoy that, and I sent it off to a bunch of my friends, and they were like, "Wow, hey, that was, like, pretty good," and a few of them were like, "That was my favorite piece so far." And that was, like, my games where I was like, "Oh, I think I wanna do this more."
To double down on that, like I've had that moment, and it was the games. It was after the games, and I was like, you're putting out stuff, and you're like, okay, it's whatever.
Is that the post?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I remember I sent the video to all the homies where I'm like, who do I know that can watch this and tell me
Like,
really about it?
yeah.
I sent it to like Richard Bloomer, and then I sent it to you, and obviously I sent it to Eric, but that's a given. And I remember him replying back, and he was like actually enthused. And coming from Carlos, you're like, if it's
Yeah, that's hard.
if it's good or bad, oh, he'll let you know. And he
Yeah.
may just mean like not a reply, but I remember him being like, actually, like that was good, like that was a phenomenal short, like whatever. And I go, oh, I can do this.
Yeah.
Like it was
Yeah.
just that moment, and it was like if I wouldn't have had that, who knows? But it was like that little boost where I was like, it gives you another 6 months
Yeah,
to
you're
be
like,
like,
I wanna do it again. Like, I
Yeah.
wanna do it again.
Yep.
And to really answer your question, like, I don't have a good answer for you other than that I enjoy like, it's the medium that I enjoy
Yeah.
a lot, and it was a challenge for myself.
Absolutely. No, and it's a scary feeling too. And it's something I've been learning lately. like I remember just sitting down, like, who are the people that I admire the most? And then I started thinking about names and, personalities. I mean, it can be YouTubers, more like people that do podcasts and speeches and stuff. Like, people I really admire that I listen to, that I can sit down 2 hours and listen to them just talking to a camera. And it's all people that are very open with their feelings, things that they want to share to the world, that they don't care. It's like, hey, might be something very, you know vulnerable, that makes you, that people think like, this is a grown man and he's like sharing stuff about, having fear, like the same fears that he had
Yeah.
when he was 10, right? And it's that was like the group of people that I started like connecting with. And it was just people talking about, and I think it also goes back to me not being like that growing up,
Mm.
me not being able to share, sit down with a friend and tell them, hey, I'm feeling this, I'm thinking about
Yep.
this. Me not being able to sit down with my mom and tell her, hey, I like this girl, or I'm scared to do this, I don't want to do this. I kept everything very to myself.
Yeah.
And it's something that in the past, I don't know, year, I'm starting to realize, like, dude, the most badass people I know is those that just talk to everybody. They express their feelings and they tell them what they think exactly the way, like, first thing comes to their mind. They tell them, and they're vulnerable. They're open about their thoughts, their feelings. They're willing to learn, even though they are you see them as like, what else can you learn?
There's
And
something scary
yeah,
about like, I agree with you, all those types of people. And for me, one of the fears is like the parent effect, right? For a long time, you think your parents, from a lot of situations, not all, you think your parents are like, that's it. Like
mhm.
they got it figured out.
Oh,
They're an
Mhm.
dude,
adult,
yes.
right? At some point, you flip and you're like, oh, my parents don't know shit.
And they're
Like
just people.
they're just
Dude,
people, right? And like
I
there's
remember
this
talking to
moment
my
of,
parents about that. Yeah.
and there's this moment of like, you kind of feel let down a little bit,
Mhm.
right? Fortunately with me, like I had that really, really early on with my parents. Like I remember being in like 5th or 6th grade and being like, oh, they're just people. But we're around a lot of popular people. And one of the stresses that like I see them experience a lot is this inevitable disappointment that they're going to give to somebody, right? Because somebody's
Mhm.
going to meet that person and they're going to have them on this wild pedestal. And that's not realistic because everybody's human.
Yeah.
And like you're going to let that person down. And it's not your fault. And so part of the reason that I've always been afraid to share stuff is not that I think that I'll ever get like wildly popular, but it's this idea that like even at the gym that I coached at, where I would like from the outside looking in, it's like he's got it put together. He's like doing well in fitness. He's like making his goals,
Mhm.
says things that make sense. He knows how to coach. And it's like this little microcosm of my life where it's like, yeah, I do know how to coach. Right. And so like you're seeing probably the best version of me that you're ever going to see
Yeah.
for this hour. And so I would keep to myself outside of that because I'm like, well, I don't want anybody to
100%.
find
Yeah.
out that I'm not who they think I am. And I think that's part of what's really scary about posting stuff and like sharing real vulnerable stuff is
Mhm.
like, dude, people are going to start to resonate with you, like whoever, and they're going to put you on a bit of a pedestal. And then it's scary to think that like you might slip up and they're
Mhm.
like, oh, forget that person. They're
And
not what I
we
thought.
we had that experience at the Arnold. We were, I mean, with Rob pretty much all the time, and he's very like people love him,
Hmm.
right? So we were walking, I'm telling you, 20 feet, and it's like impossible to get to the rain booth because there's way too many people asking for photos. And Rob is somebody that loves to give back, right? Like it loves
Right.
to take time and take the photos and stuff. But there is a point that that's it, right? Either you have to go to your room, you have to warm up. So there's a point that he's got to tell somebody that that person probably is the biggest fan that he
And he's got to
has.
say no.
Yeah, and that person's gonna approach, and Rob has to say, "I'm sorry, but no." Turn around, almost ignore that person, and leave. And I was telling Chadrick, I'm like, dude, that is, it's just crazy to me that we know this dude is the most like caring, awesome person at probably this whole place, and he's gonna break somebody's heart
Yeah.
just like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a weird phenomenon. Josh and I talk about it a lot. Like, we're not really designed, we're going to get heady for a second. We're not really designed to like know that many people, right? Like, our circle's not supposed to be that big.
Yeah, no.
Evolutionarily, like,
Yeah.
we just,
You had your
we were
tribe.
like, hey, I had your
Yeah,
tribe, and
that's
it
it.
wasn't that big.
Yeah.
And so we're at this point where like, dude, your tribe could be millions of people. Of course, there are going to be people that like you disappoint and don't like you and like
Yeah.
meet you and are actually like,
Yeah.
right? But we feel some type of way about it because it's not how it's supposed to be. And like I grew up in a small town, so doubly I'm like, wow, I kind of knew everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And you like get exposed to enough people and you start to be like, I don't really like that person. And that was a weird experience for me. The first time that I noticed myself like disliking more and more people. For the record, there's not that many people that I do, but as I like started to be like,
Yeah.
oh man, I don't drive that well with that person.
Yeah, you start realizing like the people you enjoy hanging out with, the energy you don't want in your life, and you start like, I mean, and there's nothing wrong about it. There's a lot of
Right.
people like to be very much in their circle. They like to have 3 close friends, hang out with them the whole time. They really don't care to bring too many people, into their group of friends. And it just, at the end of the day, it's about personalities and what makes you feel the most comfortable.
Yeah.
Um, Dang, what I was gonna say, I was gonna share something that was like similar to that. Okay, yeah, I remember now. Talking back about like just people like hiding stuff. We were, I mean, I'm not gonna say too much about it because I don't want to disclose this person's name, but it's somebody that's it's a good friend. And I've always noticed that he's very to himself when it comes to feelings. Like he doesn't show any feelings. He shows he's very funny,
Mm-hmm.
but I've never seen him sad. I really haven't seen him mad. It's very like
Is he talking
But-
about me right now?
no,
I've seen,
but
I've seen you mad.
but it's somebody very funny, right? And but almost like I will think like this dude is heartless,
Yeah.
because like I feel like he didn't have any feelings, right? Just very funny. And there is this moment that we're all talking about life, and very like very cool moment with a group of friends. It was like 5 or 6 of us, and we're getting like deep in our feelings.
Yeah.
Like we were looking at the stars. It was like this awesome like beach, and we're talking about life and how people deal with you know stress and being depressed, and some people you don't even know that they're depressed, and then out of nowhere it's like too late, right? And it was like this deep conversation. And this dude that have never experienced anything, like he starts talking, and he says something along the lines of, I've always been somebody so to myself because I'm always in full fear. I'm
Mm.
in fear of me getting back into he had some sort of like PTSD.
Yeah.
He struggles a lot with like depression, being sad. He's in a lot of medication. And I mean, I'm telling you, this dude that never share anything. He's
Yeah.
sharing all this stuff. Like I'm to a point that I'm like crying at that point. Sorry, he's calling me. And he says that's the reason why I'm the way I am. I don't like to show emotion, so I try to be funny. But at the end of the day, like we all deal with so much shit, and I just I think he said something like, I just wish like I always have friends like you guys that care about others, but in reality, I'm very messed up. Like
Yeah.
stuff like that. You're like, oh my god, like somebody that just almost. I thought that he didn't have any feelings. That somebody very funny.
Yeah. You're
It's
like,
somebody
he's
that's
got it.
struggling a lot,
Yeah.
right?
It's interesting on that.
And how important, like how cool would it be if people like that are able to just share that more often, so people can notice like, okay, you might need somebody to reach out to you, call you, ask you how you're doing, instead of like, oh, he's funny, he's always
He's fine.
he's very low key, he doesn't let's leave let's leave him alone,
Yeah.
right? And it was a moment that, I mean, for the people I was there, and if anybody's listening, they know that, dude, I couldn't talk. Like I was like borderline crying, and
Yeah.
and he's like, he even like remembers that moment. He's like, dude, I've never seen you like that. I'm like, I've never seen you like that.
Right.
It was very emotional. And I'm glad you were able to do that, because he said that he felt so much better after he was like open
Yeah. He's
about
like
his
hiding
feelings.
this
Yeah, he's
thing and,
almost like this. And he said, I've said that to 2 people in my life. 1, my wife. 2, you guys.
Yeah.
That's it. Crazy.
Yeah. And it's like on that same like topic, not to get like down the rabbit hole, but I remember like in my previous line of work, like working at the hospital, it was like I was always trying to be like the funny guy or like have a good time because it's a grim place at times. And I remember someone who I was like interested in dating or whatever, they were just like not for it, and that's fine. And it was just like because they thought I never could have like a serious moment essentially. I remember we were doing like we had a tough case, whatever, and I remember at the end, like they saw me like tear up a little bit, and they were like, "Oh no, this is a person who cares." And like, it went from them being like whatever to being like pursuing me because they saw another level. And it's like the same thing. As soon as you see that people have it, like you feel more connected to that person. And you go, "Oh, this
100%, yeah.
person," you're like, "Oh, there's a lot more to them than you think," but they just didn't care to share it with you in whatever situation. It's like just because you don't see someone full 360 all the time doesn't mean they don't
Yeah.
have it. It's like they just need like a catalyst to bring it out of them
Yeah.
in the right place.
So if you share your feelings, you'll get the girl.
Dude, that's the
Yeah.
take, dude. Clip it. If you share your feelings, you get the girl.
Yeah.
That's what
But
happens.
I
Or
mean,
boy,
yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah,
At the end of the
whatever.
day, it's the people really connect about that. Oh, I thought he was like somebody asked something.
Josh said not true.
Yeah, people really connect about that. That's why I mean, some of the most successful people are very open because people really connect with that specific person, that energy, or whatever they are saying. But yeah, it's scary, dude, to share about your personal life on social media
Yeah.
because you don't know what's gonna be the answer. Like sometimes I hate to say like, oh, I actually really enjoy helping people to become a better creator. Like if somebody has a question, like that's one of the goals of the podcast. If somebody has any questions, or hopefully people can take away stuff from there. I always have this fear of people saying like, oh, that's bullshit.
Yeah, that's a dumb
Mhm.
answer.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
that doesn't
all
make
he
sense.
cares is he wants to grow his podcast, stuff like
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
me saying like I legitimately care about other creators to hopefully find important information that I wish when I started there was a podcast available that I could like listen to and be like, oh, I really connect with this specific creator because he started the way I started,
Right.
and it's not all butterflies and like like straight like achievements and great videos. This person is also going through a lot of shit.
Yeah.
This person also had a rough past, and there are some people I have on the podcast that are very they share, they just had a smoother ride, right? Like
Right.
I picked up a camera and it was great, like I always struggle to get clients but everything's good. And then I've had people on the pod that are like, dude, I've been dealing with depression and that fear of like me not being good enough and crying every night and calling my mom saying, hey, I want to quit. I mean, I'm telling you, 30-year-old dude saying, I called my mom saying that I wanted to quit photography because I just feel like it's not for me. And that's just something that somebody can connect and be like,
Right.
I'm in that same exact spot and this dude is very successful now. I just got to keep going.
Yeah.
And it's just almost like, just that fear of like me saying that, people are gonna be like, "Oh, bullshit," right?
Right.
What do you think, Chad?
Yeah, I mean, having one, it's like being able to have people around, I feel like in general that you can talk to, it's like needed. And even like answering questions on stuff, I say getting down the rabbit hole of like the internet is crazy. But for me, it's especially in content space, it's like I have 3 people. Really. It's like I have you, I go to Eric, and I go to Carly. And those are my 3. And I'm like, it doesn't matter what's going on or what's happening, but I go, even if it's personal, I know I can reach out to any of those 3 and they'll help me. And it's like they're all 3 very different people who have different perspectives, come from different walks of life, create very different
And it
content.
helps. That helps.
Yeah.
That
But
helps
it's
a
like
ton,
I
yeah.
say that's like anything that I now put out, it's like this melting pot. It's like a good coach is just a good coach from the previous good coaches they've had.
Totally.
You just become this melting pot of, oh, I had a great weightlifting coach and a great CrossFit coach and a great track coach, and all of a sudden now you're a better coach because you have these great coaches who made you this way. And I say for me, like I'll send a video to Eric and Carlos. I'll get completely different feedback from both on completely different things. And it's like, okay, where can I take each bit, still leave it my own, but make it into something that's like a mesh.
Yeah.
And it becomes this middle ground of now I have influences from him, I have influences from Eric, and same thing with photo. It's like especially like Carly's like the main one for me who I talk to a lot, and I'm like, oh, these are how I go into stuff, and how can I
Yep.
do this or how can I do that? But more so, you feel connected with them to be vulnerable. Like when conversations come up about taking on new opportunities or changing things up, it's like those are the people I talk to.
Right.
Like, what do you think about this? And they know you well enough to like give input on, I think this will work for you because, or this is what I did and why it didn't. And
Yep.
then they just like let you talk it out. And it's like, oh no, I have 3 therapists.
Yeah.
And they're
That
right there.
That reminds me of something you mentioned yesterday. I was recording Jake and Matt talk to 2 of the HWPO pro athletes. And Jake says something like, it's good if you train with and you can connect this with photography
Mhm.
or content creation. He said something like, it's good if you train with other people that are doing different programs. And if they tell you 8 things, there's always gonna be that one thing that you're gonna really take away from. It might be like, the first 7 things they say, it's like, oh, that's dumb. Like, I'm not gonna listen to any of that. And then they say something, you're like, okay,
There we go.
there we go. Yeah. And I feel like with photography and videography, it's the same thing. Like, you ask for feedback, and whatever they say, like, it might be like, oh, I'm not gonna use any of that. But they might say something specifically that you're gonna be like, wait a second. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah.
apply that. So I would say, like, it's really cool to have a group of friends that you can get some feedback from,
Yeah.
right? And same thing, like, people listening to this podcast, if you listen to every episode, you might find some people, like, they're saying stuff that you don't agree with, but there's gonna be one thing that you're really gonna take away, and you can apply it to your, career as a photographer or whatever you're doing, and maybe, use it as something that's gonna help you out.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
mean, even on that, I go, the critiques I get from Eric are very specific to Eric, because it's like in everyone's own creation mind, they're trying to create, if I send you a video, you're trying to see how you can make that video better in the way you make a video
Yeah.
better. The same thing like I get from Eric. He's trying to make the video better in the same way he would make a video better. But it's not how I would make a video better.
Exactly.
But
yeah.
then it's like, okay, he's gonna tell me
And
10 corrections.
You might not agree. You won't change it.
Yeah.
But it gives you that perspective.
And all of a
It at
sudden
least
it's
makes you
like,
think about
Yeah, it makes you
something.
think about it.
We had 100 people here this weekend for our grand opening, and I was talking to this guy really briefly who doesn't really know me that well, but he knows me through a friend and like knows a little bit about me. But he knew that I had stopped competing in CrossFit and that I was a little less enthused about it than I maybe once was. And just kind of off the cuff for like no reason, it wasn't even really the topic. He was like, hey, don't let like your lack of enthusiasm for this thing take away from the people who are still really enthusiastic about it. And then like the conversation kind of ended and he walked away, and I was like, yeah, I know. And then I was like, wait a second. That was a really good reminder that like he wasn't even saying it like in an accusatory way. Like he wasn't like, hey, I'm seeing this in you. He just said it like off the cuff as like a random kind of like, check the stove before you
Yeah.
leave the house, like
Yep.
that type of deal. And I walked away from that conversation and like sat with it for the rest of the day and was like, man, that really is going to sit in my head for a long time. And my initial gut was like, I don't agree with you.
yeah. I think it's like the thought too of when someone kind of gives you advice you already know and you're like, I know that.
Yeah.
Like, why are you telling me? Why are you wasting my time? But sometimes that like reminder makes you think, okay, that
Yeah.
was good. Or doubling down on that, it's like when someone is like in that same space of him being like, hey, don't let your influence of it affect other people. I think that's like a pretty good idea, because people hate or love to hate stuff. They're like,
They love it.
it's like the trending thing is to be like, I don't like this artist or this music because they're the most popular. And it's like, hey guys, Taylor Swift is a superstar.
It's just really
Like,
good.
I bet her concerts are phenomenal, and you just don't like it because it's like the cool thing to do.
Yeah.
And it's almost like when you step away from something, you want other people to kind of step away because it gives you validation and
Well, the
being like,
complainer needs somebody to complain
Yeah.
to. Yeah.
so it's like when you have that little glimpse, it's like, oh, like let me let people be happy.
Yeah.
let me still pump them up on this thing, even if I'm over it, because it's
Totally.
only going to help them a lot more. It's going to make both of us happier, and it's just going to build a better relationship.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I just I can tell when Chadrick's really looking for like feedback, and he means it too, because I like a couple of weeks ago he sent me something. He sent me a video, and I think I was kind of busy. He's just like, "Hey, what do you think about this video?" So it was very like in my mind. I'm like, "Oh, he wants like you know
Like a pat on the back,
yeah,
like, yeah,
like no
good
no
video.
no like an opinion," but I didn't know it was that like important,
Right.
or maybe you were asking me a question, and I kind of answered kind of like chill, like short. I was busy, and he's like, that was not the answer I was expecting. If you could like actually like expand to that, like I will appreciate it. I'm like, oh, okay, he actually
He wants
really,
this.
yeah,
Yeah.
he really wants to learn more about this and stuff. And that's something that you gotta also like remember, that when people are asking you stuff, like they're taking time of their day to ask you something. It's not just to
Yeah, they
like,
really care about it.
yeah, exactly. And I do the same thing. I mean, I've sent you videos all the time. I'm
Yeah.
like, hey, what do you think about this? And you always take away good stuff from it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny because sometimes I'll go back and forth. Like I'll load it in the message, and I'm like looking at, it, I'm like, do I click send?
Yeah.
Like, do I want to see? And I'm like,
Yeah,
all right, yeah, I do want to know what he's gonna say.
Yeah.
But it like
Sometimes
usually
you
it's,
don't. You're like,
yeah, you're like, I
"Ah."
know it's gonna hurt. Like, especially when you know it's not, you're like, it's not the bar, and you're like, oh, he's gonna rip this.
Yeah.
And you're just like waiting. You're just like, okay, that's like that was on
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
good
But it
feedback.
always, I mean, it helps a lot, especially like you in person. I mean, this man will hop on my computer and be like, ding, ding,
I'm
ding,
like,
ding, ding, ding,
Chadrick,
ding. Yeah.
come here. And I start like, because I feel like you can learn a lot more if you see what I'm doing while I'm
Yes.
Yeah.
explaining it. And I always tell him like, I love this. Let's create a different project, duplicate the project, and this is what I will do. Either you want to keep it or not,
Yeah.
it's up to you. It's your video, but this is what I will do. And what I've realized is that you take little parts
Yeah.
from those. I'm like, oh, okay, I really like this.
Yep.
And then you apply it to your next video.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool to see like how, and that's how I am too.
Yeah.
Like that's, you just learn from other people, and then you both kind of like help each other
Yeah,
elevate.
climb
Even
it
with like the little script we wrote, it's like
Oh,
I
yeah.
wrote out one, he wrote out one, and I was like, I like this line, I don't like
Yeah.
that. And in our heads, we're like, oh, mine's better, his is better.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, he actually did. So I'm like, pull this, pull that. At the end, it's like, oh, this is a banger now.
Yeah.
It went from being like, okay, this was good, and okay, that was good, to being like, oh, now you have two perspectives that combine to one, and you get something that's phenomenal.
I send a lot of the stuff that I'll like write on, even though I'm just like writing a professional piece for like an email or something,
Mhm.
right? I'll send it to Josh and he'll like rip it. And I almost always keep all the edits unless
Yeah.
it's something where I'm like, no, that's how Josh would say it. Like
Yep.
I'm gonna make it how I say it.
Yep.
But otherwise
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, cool,
Yeah.
totally. I messed that up. Like you fix it.
All right, boys, we've been live for a little over an hour and 20 minutes. So we're gonna cut it here, and hopefully we can do a version 2, episode 2, or some kind
I'm
of
in.
stuff with this.
Run it
If the
back.
people want
Run
us
it
to.
back.
Yeah.
The people want us back. So, well, thank you so much for joining me today. We've been in the talks with both. Like I've been on talks with both of you. That will be cool to have an episode with you. So it kind of worked out this week that we were together. So I'm like, hey, let's just do a us three talking about different stuff. But yeah, thank you so much. You know that both of you are good friends. I really, in different ways, I really admire both of you. So
Thanks, dude.
Yeah. Thanks for
Yeah.
having us.
and if you guys want to add anything, you can. But if you watch the episode, you listen to it, and you like it, share with a friend. It really helps. If you want to reach out to them, Jake's Instagram is at Jake Marconi, right?
Yeah, super simple.
Just simple. I mean, yours is at Chagdrick, so
Yeah,
it's just your name,
Just my name.
or his his company Instagram is
Undeniable Media.
at Undeniable Media. So if you want to reach out to them, tell them that you listened to the episode and you like it. That helps a lot. I love feedback. If you say, hey, I think you should improve something. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, tell
Yeah,
us to
let us
I
know.
might
We'll
take it
reject
into
it at first, and
consideration.
then we'll
Yeah.
accept it.
Yeah, so
I
it
might
always
cry a
helps.
little bit.
Again, we're only 21 episodes in, so there's a lot of room for improvement.
Thanks,
Yes.
Carlos.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Before we cut it real quickly, 15-second answer. What's next for you?
We're gonna figure out how we're gonna manage this gym that we just built. And then I'm going on the road to semifinals for 3 weeks in May.
Perfect. How about you, Chagdrick?
Dude, I'll be with him at semifinals, man. I have a couple things in between, just small projects, but nothing too crazy. It's just like get back into it, try to learn a little bit more, and then head to Disney World, baby.
Run Disney.
You're going to Disney World and Disneyland.
Hopefully
Back
Disney
to
World,
back.
Universal, and then Disneyland.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
awesome.
Yeah.
I have no desire
Alright,
to go to any of
And
those.
thanks everyone in
Please
the
come back.
chat that's saying good things. Justin, Brian, Chad, everybody that's been, Jordan. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Josh, click the end live and see y'all